Let's introduce ourselves. Robert?
Yeah, I'm Robert Spolda, so I'm Assistant Director of Software Engineering at Northwestern Mutual. I oversee our client communications area right now, so our transactional communications, our e-signature area, and our data lens. Been at Northwestern Mutual for 7 years, and happy to be here today.
And I'm Brian Long. I've been with Northwestern Mutual almost 4 years in the application and data architecture practice within enterprise architecture. Areas I've focused on is this area of business domain driven architecture. So kind of between the business architecture and the enterprise architecture, kind of that area. And I've worked a lot with Robert in engagements in the space of client communications, also quite a bit of work in omni-channel experience and multi-experience applications area, working across our enterprise. All right, we're going to quickly cover the agenda, and what we're going to do is talk about BDDA, Business Domain Driven Architecture at Northwestern Mutual. And how a key component of that is basically cataloging capabilities. There have been other presentations on capability modeling, and we do the same thing at NM, but we kind of take it in a little bit of a different direction, in that we use that as a foundation for what we call business domain models, which we will go into quite a bit of detail on.
Then we'll dive into some of the solutions that came out of our business domain, and then we're going to scope right into our communication lens. And so we'll walk through what we call our communications factory, and then taking our modeling information concepts and making those or walking through how we reuse the ingredients of integration through across domains.
Yeah, and talking about integration and reuse, a key aspect of supporting that is how we model information concepts that are derived from some of those bases, those primary business capabilities, those level 1 business capabilities. So we'll go into kind of the modeling techniques we use and how we leverage ABACUS, both studio and particularly more enterprise of late in that effort. Then at the end, we're going to get into some lessons learned, kind of from both our perspectives, from a EA perspective, and then impacts to the engineering side, how we've collaborated and how we've dealt with some of the challenges, and then some Q&A at the end. All right. So to begin, business domain-driven architecture, its purpose is to align business with technology. At the bottom, you can see the business domain is a grouping of related business capabilities and information concepts. So let's start with the business capabilities. In Northwestern Mutual, we've mapped out 119 business capabilities, and we've grouped them into 19 domains. So because we're a large enterprise, there's a lot of breadth and quite a bit of complexity there. But we're trying to get a handle on that enterprise view. So what we're doing is we're defining business domains. Those are just groupings of related capabilities. And then we're taking it a level deeper, going into associated information concepts. And in modeling this across the domains, it establishes a common set of terms in business language that with the SMEs in the business, we agree on what we call things. That can be challenging at times, but there's a real benefit to that. Another key component is we identify when we model these, enterprise architecture cannot model these. We do not have it in detail. We can facilitate it, but we don't have enough in-depth knowledge in these business areas to model them on our own. So we pull in SMEs, and as we do in the development area, the product management or program management area, and in the solution architecture area, in those areas, we catalog them as single points of accountability and contacts within the business. So that's a huge benefit if you're working on a cross-organization or a cross-departmental initiative, cross-department initiative, cross-unit initiative, because you know who to reach out to and talk to about these concepts as you plan significant development efforts. The other thing we'll talk about towards the end is how we're building some technology and abstractions, patterns around these models. And in doing so, we're trying to retire some of our legacy APIs, legacy technology platforms. And in moving towards this domain-driven approach, we're creating reusable building blocks and also reducing our ecosystem complexity across the enterprise. Also, we'll talk about how these models help us align strategies, enterprise strategies, digital transformation strategies and initiatives along with or align them to business capabilities. And that helps us also improve our planning and helps us understand where to invest when to move our systems forward. Comment at the bottom, we are adapting the Business Architecture Guild's BizBoc framework. I'm sure many of you in the business architecture sphere are pretty familiar with that. We also derived our original models from the reference models in insurance and financial services. But Northwestern Mutual's business, our business is different enough that our model does veer from it significantly in some areas, but we did start with those reference models.
So as we said, we're going to focus in on the communication space today. And as we look at domain modeling, our first step is to identify who are the stakeholders, right? And so as we look at this, communication area has multiple stakeholders, right? We have folks from technology, we have folks from operations, legal, marketing, digital product, you name it, right? And so what we've identified as a key to success as we are building that area, as we're modeling out these domain areas, is to identify stakeholders from each one of these areas. That way, as we're working through the needs of this domain, we're making sure that everyone's voice is being heard and co-creating as a whole, right? And so as we look at the communication domain, we are taking in a vast amount of information from all these different areas of the business that align to the needs of that domain. And Brian will get to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so two key concepts, abstractions we use in Northwestern Mutual are value streams, which some of you may be familiar with. And we use those value streams to expose, to confirm what our level one business capabilities are in the different tiers. And we'll expand that a bit. And then we also leverage something called abilities too. And I'm referencing at the bottom of this slide that we did engage with the Feld Group. Feld Group has written quite a bit and covered quite a bit of this concept of abilities too, as a way to map initiatives to business capabilities. And we basically adapted that. A couple of talented colleagues within NM within Northwestern Mutual have helped build out this approach. So let's go in and look at value streams. Value streams, they have that triggering stakeholder that achieves a value proposition. And this value stream is a genericized version of NM's value stream for acquiring a risk product. So acquiring a product contract for an insurance policy. So the value proposition is that coverage. And value streams are broken up typically into several stages, and each stage has its own value item that's delivered by that stage, and it has its own participating stakeholders that are involved in providing those capabilities to move their way through the value stream. They have entrance criteria and exit criteria. I'm not going to drill in these in great detail, but they have exit criteria, entrance and exit criteria. And then typically you're going to want to list your existing technology platforms. Now we block that out for obvious reasons. We don't want to talk about NM's particular platforms here, because this would be applied to your particular enterprise and your particular value stream. But then what we also do is we determine what the highest level business capabilities are, level 1 capabilities. And those are listed only for the capabilities in one of our 19 domains. The domain Robert kind of showed in the previous slide, the kind of the communication is a central communication, collaboration, and content. That is one of our 19 domains. These are the capabilities in that domain. And you'll notice many of these business capabilities are leveraged in multiple stages. I think content and communication are leveraged in every single stage in this value stream. We have languages and meeting, other concepts. So what we're showing in the blue box at the bottom is there's a lot of other L1 capabilities. And it turns out that it's actually now 13 of the 19 business domains we've determined are involved. Well, in this value stream, 11 of the 19 are involved, but we've determined across communication, collaboration, and content, 13 of the domains are involved in this effort or interact with communication, collaboration, and content. Now we're going to expand on abilities 2. This abilities 2, we leverage matrices in ABACUS Studio primarily, because on the left, we're capturing highest level business requirements. So think of abilities 2 as requirements that a business architect would put together with marketing typically, and maybe product management, to describe transformative requirements that the business needs to strategically meet its clients' needs. And then what we list at the top are level 1 capabilities, content management. We're showing just a small portion of this matrix, content management, and then level 2 capabilities under that. And we map the requirements, the abilities to the impacted capabilities, the capabilities that we need to provide to service that requirement, to satisfy that requirement. And you'll see there's a create, there's a modify, and I don't know if we have an example of use, but create means we need to establish this capability. It doesn't really exist, or we need to expand on it significantly. Modify means minor changes or enhancements, and then use would be leverage an existing capability. Think of scoring each of those. Create would be 3, modify would be 2, use would be 1, and then summing a column. And by doing that, you can heat map the capabilities where you need to do the most work, where you need to invest the most time and effort and money strategically first in an order of priority. So this is just another way of slicing capabilities that allow us to do cross-domain initiatives, how to fund them, how to coordinate them as we build out these capabilities. This model is the level 1 capability model for the communication, collaboration, and content domain. So the brown box, and you can see this is modeled in ABACUS, contains primary information concepts. So a primary information concept maps 1-to-1 with a level 1 capability. So think of content is represented here in communication. The capability would be content management, communication management, channel management, meeting management. Those would be capabilities, and they have corresponding primary concepts. We show the relationships between these capabilities. For instance, a meeting occurs over 1 or more channels. Communication is delivered or received via 1 or more channels. Surrounding this domain are all the domains that interact with it. There's 19 business domains, 13 of which interact. Cross-domain relationships occur between those business domains. You can see we have domains that represent our stakeholders, experience, product agreement, etc., legal, regulatory, and compliance. And you can see that there are quite a bit of cross-domain relationships. Those are also modeled in greater detail in some of our other viewpoints. And what we're basically doing here is we're showing those dependencies between primary concepts and other other business domains. So think of those relationships to other domains as relationships between primary concepts across domains that are just abstracted up.
So now since we have our baseline domain model, this is where Brian handed that off to my teams and we said, okay, great. How can we build an architecture within our communication platform to align to BDDA standards, right? And so what we call is our communication factory. We have what we call our front doors, where we can take in requests from those external domains, right? So we take in requests both synchronously, asynchronously, on demand. And then what we do, we then throw this through this pipeline within our communication platform, right? And the beauty of this is that all these steps are really configuration based for us. And so we built the logic once and let the data drive the actual outcomes out of these steps. So our first step after we receive our requests from our stakeholders is we aggregate data and run rules. And so we will go out and call back to other domains to gather data. Let's just say someone comes in and we need to go get information about Robert and his address and where we deliver this. Our communication factory will then go and we'll get a key in as our input, and we'll go and call back into these other business domain APIs to go and grab that additional data and richer details. And then we assemble the content, right? So communications are made up of multiple pieces of content. And so we'll create all the pieces and parts of that content. Think about something like our life contracts. They're made up of 188 pieces of content right now. So we'll throw that into a bundling component, right? This way we can align for an ease of a client experience. Right? No one wants to download 188 PDFs, so let's put it into one, right? And bundle as a deliverable unit. And then we'll store, right? So we'll digitally store both the pieces and parts and the entire bundle. This way, any stakeholder that wants to come in to gather that data and do whatever they want within the enterprise, they have it in all shapes and forms, right? And that storage then has retention associated with it. And then we get into our delivery. So we do omni-channel delivery. And so we meet our clients in the way that they want to, work with Northwestern Mutual, right? So we can print deliver, we can email, we can SMS, you name it. We basically allow that just to be an abstraction, right? And the beauty of this, right, comes into play is having roles and responsibilities of who actually owns this functionality, right? So many times you see the pendulum swing within an enterprise where, especially in communications, where a team just says, hey, I want to run my own communications. Well, that decentralization of a communication space then allows for actually more maintenance across an enterprise, right? If we had one change, let's say a regulatory change that came in, or we can't deliver in one way or form, well, we can make that change once and it spiderwebs across all these communications instead of making it in all these different areas across the enterprise. And across all this, then we're auditing and pushing out publications for our stakeholders to consume and take additional actions after that. So we're in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin, we like our brandy old fashions, right? You might be wondering, well, what the heck does brandy old fashioned really have to do with communication and business domains, right? Well, we're going to get into what we call our metaphor for content creation. If you click the next slide, so if we look at this, we think about communication as kind of a recipe, right? So our communication, what we're trying to create is a brandy old-fashioned suite. Awesome. Now, the pieces and parts that make up and the ingredients in our brandy old-fashioned, well, that would be our content here, right? So you have your brandy, your orange slices, your cherries, right? That's our what we would consider our content. And then you have our channel, which would be, we would deliver this in a rock glass. But then you have the directions on how you compose that, right? This purple box around our communication area. So you can see how this analogy of ingredients and a recipe can really tie back to how we see the communication domain.
And in supporting that mixology metaphor in the content space, maybe not so much the cocktail space, but basically what we need to do is we need to publish these domain models. We need to develop them and publish them, share them across the enterprise. And when we build out a domain model, it's not just at this primary concept level, which you saw in that previous slide. It's the secondary concepts and subtypes and relationships under that that we model out with the domain experts, the SMEs, and to describe our process at a real high level that we follow in NM is when we build out, we have workshops building out a domain, and when we do that, we have participants and informed. Participants, we invite all of those to a kickoff meeting. Anyone who has a business dependency on that domain, either delivers it or is a consumer, we involve in the initial kickoff in the domain modeling, and we distill that down to informed individuals, which are typically business leaders who want to know what their teams are working on. So they're not surprised that they're investing time helping us build out these models, and they understand the purpose. The participants are those who are involved in the modeling sessions. And those include business owners, product owners, engineering. And as we go through typically several sessions, maybe a dozen every couple sessions a week, the domain typically kind of over time coalesces into sub areas of the domain. Think of them as more tightly coupled specialties within a domain. In CC and C domain, we've been talking about, there's three: communication, collaboration, content. We end up developing that more detailed model, sub-model or area model as part of the overall domain model. When we get the model to the point where an initial version is published, we recruit contributors, and those contributors you see in that box. This is a enterprise dashboard, and you'll see the box in the upper left. We have some things grayed out for proprietary reasons, but we have the domain contributors and their role in the business. We have the catalog there. We have an expandable viewpoint or model diagram in the lower left where you can drill in, not only see that top level model, but there's a navigation button. You can drill into the domain area models. And then we have our information concept, all the concepts in the catalog top right. And then the types, if we have subtypes of concepts, we have them lower right. And we have detailed definitions that are grayed out again for business proprietary reasons, but we have detailed definitions for all those entities that are a component of a domain model. So we leverage, this is published across our enterprise and really facilitates collaboration as we do initiatives, build out initiatives like Robert just discussed in the communications factory. The other thing we have is we have downstream CI/CD tooling, including a domain API registry. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that support our REST integration. So we have a API registry that we integrate with the repository, the ABACUS repository, through their REST API that we use to help publish downstream APIs that are structured along the lines of the model. One initiative that we're starting to work with Avolution customer success on is we need to come up with a better way to model the versionings. I should say the versions of and the versioning of our domain models because of this dependency on our APIs that we'll see. So we are still working forward this is an iterative process. We're working forward to further refine our capabilities around these domain models, but we're already seeing significant benefits. And what you see on the left I described how we have naturally split up this domain, communication domain, into three primary areas. These are deliberately blurred, again, because it's our business. But think of it as those 7 primary concepts are scattered in these diagrams, and underneath are secondary concepts, subtypes, that are required for us to deliver a capability. So these are more data-centric in nature, but that translates to being able to engineer solutions that leverage these domain models. And we're doing that in 2 ways right now. We are building out web services, so domain APIs, leveraging both REST and GraphQL, that are built or structured around these domain models. We can see some examples here where you might gather a signature through various channels or technologies, and you would want to attach that signature to an agreement that's associated with content. So we do a post to that URI, and if you were to look at our domain model, you'd be able to navigate through the associations down from the primary concept down to secondary concepts. Content can be of type agreement. There can be an e-signature associated with that agreement. We're attaching the e-signature to the content. Get would be a situation where maybe we have content communication, I should say, that has multiple components of content. Robert talked about how a communication is typically built out of pieces of content. This would be a way to get all the content associated with communication that's tagged with the ID that you see there. And then once you've perused that content through your system, and you can select, modify, and then update a particular piece of content within that communication, you would do that typically through a put operation. The other real benefit of these domain models is when we use GraphQL, typically more on a UI or an experience layer implementation on top of this. The GraphQL schemas, and sub-schemas can oftentimes mirror, leverage the domain models that we have, that you see on the left. The other area that we are finding huge benefits is in business events. So building out an API, you realize, could require a significant amount of investment, and we're using those matrices I showed you, those ability to matrices and mappings, to help us prioritize what APIs we build out first. But even before we build out the APIs, we can use these models to leverage technology like Kafka event streaming to publish events that are of interest to the business. So for instance, this example is we have a product contract is the topic. So that's what someone could subscribe to. They could say, a system could say, I care about product contract states and transitions. They could subscribe to that topic, and then they could get notifications or events on status changes, such as the contract is stored, sent, delivered through some channel, some communication mechanism over a channel. The contract's been canceled for some reason, or an error occurred at some point, or an exception in the processing of the contract. So we are finding real-world applications for enterprise solutions that span our ecosystem. We're leveraging these domain models in a very practical manner to an increasing extent as we move forward. Quickly, I'll talk a little bit more about moving forward. So once you've got a model and you've published it, there's a need to maintain it and to introduce changes and enhancements to the model. And what we're doing with the increased richness in the more recent releases of ABACUS Enterprise, particularly in the modeling area, we're actually empowering our domain architects, so specialists within the business domain, to draw out and propose changes to the model within their sub-team, and then present them to EA, and then EA, we would review them, refine them, and then publish them into the mainline model. But the point we're making here is that we're adding more and more of our domain architects as modelers, giving them the modeler function in an ABACUS, allowing them to use the advanced diagramming capabilities to modify their own domain models. Our intent is to further federate this model maintenance over time across all the business domains. And this is a huge help to EA. Otherwise, we become a bottleneck. EA should try to maintain all these models at a fine grain level. It's not efficient or effective. So we're excited about this initiative that we're moving forward on with Avolution. Some key takeaways. I think we're pretty good for time. You want to start this, Robert, and then we'll.
Yeah, so key takeaways, right? I mean, things that we've learned, things that we wish we knew when we started, right? But co-creation is huge, right? We looked at that that hub of communication and stakeholders, right? Being able to co-create to identify all the functionality and use cases is big, right? I mean, we can get that early in the process. We're able to define a domain with less variation over time. Yes, there's going to be iterations of that domain. That's just the nature of the beast. But getting that co-creation early and often was definitely a key for success for us.
I'll interject real quickly on that. Some of you are probably aware developing value streams is a time-consuming process. It is beneficial, but it can be very challenging to do them formally. So this is kind of a supplement to that. We come into domain modeling workshops for a domain we've already talked to the product leads and business areas and said, where are you integrating most across the organization with other systems? What use cases do you have in your operational areas you support where you're most integrating across the ecosystem? And we come into the workshops with those key use cases. So this is a supplement to value streams, which, to be honest, we don't always have the time to develop as much as we would like. This is a really valuable supplement. Come in with those cross-functional ecosystem integration use cases.
And these conceptual models are great for what we just talked about, from API management, from eventing. But what we're able to do with this now is take it to that second layer of a logical domain data model, right? Especially large enterprises, right? Data across many years of that enterprise. NM's been around for 160 plus years. Our data is kind of in silos right now, right? And so as we're looking at that, we're able to then create this canonical model aligned to the business domain, and then chip away at that at the same time that we are in the sessions with the SMEs, right? So we're taking the advantage of, yes, we're creating this model, but yes, we can also identify these attributes. But then that also allows us to say, great, we can identify SMEs who actually are responsible for the source of truth of that data, right? And so taking that as a secondary step after that model is created. Don't let perfect get in the way of better, right? Like Brian was saying, this is not, this is a lot of work, and you don't want to necessarily, do this in a waterfall fashion, right? Agile iterations of this, right? And if we can take pieces and parts, and as long as you're incrementally gaining across that life cycle, take that and run with it, right? Those small wins over time will lead into this larger, bigger initiative.
Yeah, and another example of that is, I think I mentioned earlier, with business events, we're finding that there's a real value to having these models so that an area of the business can say, I care about this event in this domain, and they can talk to the domain contributors in that space and say, how can you let me know? This is the event I want to hear about. I need to be aware of. And then that they can publish an event, and the events can be named and follow the nomenclature and the structure that's published in the model. So there's there's a consistent way to communicate a need and a publication model. And we're finding that we're implementing events sometimes in areas where we aren't not yet implementing APIs. We may have legacy systems or legacy APIs even that we can't necessarily migrate forward to follow the model yet. It's just a priority of investment, but we can still publish the events that follow the schema, and it really facilitates the eventing model as well.
Yeah, and that really falls right to that next bullet, right? So as I've overseen our business, engineering application development team, what we're really trying to do is all new development should be aligned to BDDA, right? We wish we had the luxury of the time, effort, and resources to say we're just gonna stop everything and and go align everything to BDDA. We just don't have that that luxury here at NM, right? And so, but what we can do is make a standard that says anything new that we're creating will align to the business domain driven architecture. We also saw that leveraging our communications backlog, because it's so integral within an enterprise, helped us prioritize modeling and implementation tasks, right? So some things that we've been doing is saying, my team is going to Brian and saying, hey, in next quarter, we're looking to get, these types of communication onboarded into our communications factory. But we see a gap that, these 4 different domain areas are not modeled yet. And so what that can allow us to do is then shift resources in EA, partner, right? And be ahead of the curve. So when we're ready to actually do the development work, we have the domains modeled, and that process rolling, right? Because instead of waiting and saying, okay, we have engineers ready to implement, but we still need to identify, well, what does this even look like from an enterprise architecture layer?
Yeah, and I'll quickly add that if you remember when we showed that matrix of ability twos, Robert's talking about how within a domain, there's a backlog that drives priorities. That ability to matrix helps us manage priorities at the macro level, kind of across the enterprise. So of our 19 business domains, we've only modeled, I shouldn't say only, it's been a lot of work. We've modeled 11. We have 2 more that are in process. So you cannot model, it's impossible to model all these domains all at once. So we used techniques like the ability twos matrix to help us prioritize what domains are most significant to the business and its strategy, its near-term strategy, transformative strategy. So we also leverage ability twos to help us with some of this prioritization. Yep. And then I just talked about this topic. We're onboarding our domain architects in each of the domain, the more specialized SMEs as modelers to help us maintain the model going forward. Change requests help us to expedite and make that more efficient, more effective. And then Robert also talked about the foundation for logical domain data modeling. Data models are at a level where they're going to be done not by EA, but done in a domain. And so we think we'll be working on some kind of an integration of models between ABACUS, a logical model corresponding to conceptual, pulling out some of the attributes that will be maintained by the domain architects, and the data architect in that same domain area will help do the cross mapping in these logical models to the data source, which could be a physical database, could be a data product, could be various different data sources. So have that mapping from conceptual to the logical and to, I call it physical in single quotes. It's whatever your source is for that data. It's not typically going to be a specific database. It's going to be some kind of a tier or data product. And then
the best key takeaway out of all of them: drink old fashions. It definitely makes work a little more fun. That's for sure.
So with that, appreciate your time.